Thank you. The POB's mission statement is advancing constitutional policing and accountability for APD and the Albuquerque community. I'd like to get an approval of tonight's agenda. Does anyone have any changes before we do?
I move that we approve the agenda.
I would first go and change.
Well, I just thought you'd do the motion and then you have the conversation.
Okay.
Okay. So
It's
you tell me when it's
motion
time.
and second.
Okay.
And then you're open for discussion.
Okay, we're open for discussion.
Okay.
All right. I'd like to make one change. I'd like to take lunch at 6:30. Okay, and during that time, we will go into a closed session, and we'll discuss our personnel issues during that time. Any other changes?
I don't have any.
Okay. It's been motion and second that we approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Have the same rights? Motion carried. Okay. Any public comments? Thank you. Ted Nomensky, and you do have 3 minutes, Ted.
Thank you. My name is Ted Nomensky. Here is question I'm asking. Do we have, constitutional policing? Very interesting. Do we have civilian oversight? That is most important. We do not have civilian oversight. Simply we don't have. Here is, I will explain it. All of them are retired cops, including Director Ed Horners. And they have to live, after they retire, to own code. Once you are cop, always be cop. Yes, I don't pull it from my pocket. From the old cops retire, their own. And wait a minute, I can have a hard time to read it right here, my notes. Code of loan code, including what is it? I further move it. This code of what they live. Fraternal brotherhood. Yes. What we get when cops start investigating cops? Nothing. Lapel cameras are now totally edited. Even about 3 weeks ago, I ordered 5 cops. How much I got? And I ordered individual. No, I got everything on the one disc. I want 5 discs. So that's where we at now. Once you edit it, this is also, I have case also went to federal court because district court, state district court moved to federal court, violating civil rights, constitutional rights. So now, there's simply system not over. How effective is board? I already mentioned before. Who is puppet? Who's Mike asked puppet? Who's puppet? And who is puppeteerian? We know who is puppeteerian. I'm sorry. Board has no authority in present time in all. Everyone who left complaining, go to city council meeting. Just remember that. They come to city council meeting. Not too many of you go to city council meeting and raising this issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ted. All right, can we get a review and approval of the minutes? We all have looked at them. Can I get a motion?
I move we approve the minutes.
I second.
It's been motion and second that we approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Reports from city staff, APD.
Good evening, Chair Waits and members of the board. I'm Commander Velarde with the Albuquerque Police Department Professional Standards Division. For the month of February, we responded to 38,463 calls for service, which is a decrease of 3,496 from the month of January. Total internal affairs cases for the month of February, 3. Internal cases administratively closed, we had none. No mediations. We had 33 alerts distributed through the EIRS system. And pending IA cases for the month of February, 7. And IA cases open in the month of February, 8.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right, any questions?
Thank you.
Commander? Thank you. Okay. Quarterly report on the vehicle crashes.
Good evening, Chair Waits and members of the board. I'm Acting Commander Rivera for the Metro Traffic Division. I chair the Crash Review Board. Reviewing the last quarter, but I also included October, which I believe Commander Velarde went over, but there were some new numbers
We can't hear you. There you go.
that came in. So I included October and then the most recent 3 months up to January 31st, 2019. The board heard a total of 46, there was a total of 46 preventable crashes for this time period. Of those, there were 8 verbal reprimands issued to APD officers. There were 17 letter of reprimands issued to the various officers. There was 1 suspension for 8 hours. There was an additional 8-hour suspension given to another different officer, but he's appealing that. And then we're waiting on 19 final decisions to discipline to come back from the officer-specific chain of command. And a lot of these, we had a lot of, I believe we had 32 in January's Crash Review Board, so that's why we're waiting for so many to come back. And then this is from risk management for claims paid out. There was a large claim paid out in October, and it was specifically paid out on October 26, 2018. That's why I included it in this board for $3.8 million. So total for those types of claims was $4,235,426.63 or 93 cents. And then first party damage claims, which is like an officer hitting a curb, damaging his tire or other parts of the police vehicle, for this last quarter was $272,797.54.
By that, do you mean to say that there was no other car involved?
Correct.
Okay.
Risk at this time couldn't provide, because the way they have broken down for second party claims is it can include damage to a police building for whatever reason. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a crash to a police building. They said it could be, something else. So they were trying to work those bugs out to get me these numbers next time.
Okay.
Chief Geyer implemented a new police officer driver training program. It's kicking off as we speak, and I explained it, and it's in your handouts. It's employee-involved crash collision point system criteria. So the criteria for the point system lies in the following 4 levels of preventable crashes. So this is only for preventables. As you can see, there's no points for a non-preventable crash, so the officer's not at fault. A level 1 collision, which we'll get into what the different levels are and what they mean, is 1 point. A level 2 collision is 2 points. Level 3 is 3 points, and level 4 is 4 points. So level 1 collision is there's no vehicle or medical transport required if an officer is involved in a crash. Level 2 collision it means traffic collision resulting in 1 or more vehicles being towed or traffic collisions with medical transport not amounting to great bodily harm or death. A level 3 collision is an unauthorized code 3, so lights and sirens, or an authorized code 3, but it involves unsafe speed for conditions, failure to stop or yield, or clearing an intersection, and any other unsafe driving. And then level 4 consists of a traffic collision resulting in great bodily harm or death, traffic collisions involving an employee's gross negligence or reckless disregard for safety, and this actions create a high risk of death or serious injury. So the point criteria and guidance and remediation thresholds, preventable traffic collision that meets the criteria of any of the 4 levels must be assigned a number. The points accrue for each traffic collision on the date of the collision and remain accountable for 24-month period from the date of the collision. Out to 24 months, the points no longer account towards the last 24 months. So here's really where it breaks down to what it is. So if there's 2 points accrued in 12 months, the employee will be required to complete an online city-operated permit training video and take any additional action deemed appropriate. Results will be supplied by risk management. If there's 3 points that are accrued in 12 months, the employee will be required to attend McGinnis School of Driving and take any additional action deemed appropriate. And then when an employee accrues 4 or more points or 3 preventable crash collisions within 24 months, the employee will be required to attend the Charlie Fegan Law Enforcement Driving School and take any additional action deemed appropriate. And the chief just asked for the numbers for the level 4s 3 weeks ago, and we're supplying those names to the chief now.
And on the crashes, the ones where it was just riding into a curb, the ones you mentioned before, that number 272,000 or something like that?
Correct.
Is the number of those, it doesn't say how many people were involved in those, in that dollar figure.
I can get that from risk management, but I did not ask for that. Ma'am.
Okay, it would be helpful to know how many it took to get to that
To that
number.
dollar amount.
Yeah.
Understood.
So that would be great for the next report. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Understood.
Yes, what's the form of the order that implements this process?
The point system?
Yes.
And what do you mean by form?
Is it an SOP or is it a chief's, is it an order,
It was
promulgated by the chief or?
It was an order given directly from the chief, almost in this exact same format, and we're working on with risk management, operations review, internal affairs, and the crash review board to work together. To me, it makes sense to really assign these points at the crash review board, because if not, a person is going to have to go back and look at each individual crash report to say the officer is running code 3, because it's only going to say it in the details of the report. So to me, it makes sense to do it at my level, and then we're going to work through that to see, does it come from the chief, which is operations review, to make these officers attend, the different level criteria.
And how does it comport with the rest of the orders that, that deal with traffic safety or driving safety? Such as running code 3. That's I guess I'd like to understand how it fits in with all the driving safety requirements.
I understand what you're saying. I think since it's brand new, this came out 2-3 weeks ago from the chief. We're still working a lot of that, together and trying to get the handshake between all of the different entities or departments to see what we maybe need to add an SOP section for this point system. But my understanding, it just came straight from the chief, and we're implementing it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? I definitely appreciate this. I've been asking for this for, 4 or 5 months. But I also appreciate a corrective action. I think going forward, we have something we can visually see, and it's tangible, and we can work towards a corrective action. So
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
For that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Waits. Thanks, your board.
Thank you. (2-8) on-body recording devices.
Good evening, Chair Waits and the POB Board. I'm here tonight to just give you a quick update on 2-8, which is the on-body recording device. Right now, where it's at, it did get revisions, and the next step is to send it to IMT, which is Dr. Ginger. However, we have not sent it in yet because he is busy writing the report, so the next IMR, and we don't like to inundate him with too much stuff because he already has some policies that he's looking at. So we give him a little time, and then we'll send it. So that's the only reason why it's in a holding pattern. But once he receives it, then we get the okay, we'll publish it. Just some quick changes that happened or updates that happened to the policy are, we did up the sanction from a 6 to a 5. So now if you don't record on mandated incidents, you will receive a 5 instead of a 6 at your starting point. The other thing that has been updated is, and you will notice it once you see the policy, is the former policy said devices, and it said devices throughout the policy. We only have one device. And I think that was way back in the day when we did have different units using different recording systems until we all went to the Axon and everyone got trained on it. And now department-wide, we only use one. So we didn't want to confuse the public or our officers, even if they're like, oh, wait, so we can use another one? No, you absolutely can't. So that's just another change that you'll see. And the only other thing is the mute. The ORBD that we use now does have a mute function, so we did add into SOP that they are allowed to mute it when they're talking tactics or a plan of how they're going to approach. After that, they do have to unmute. If for some reason something goes wrong with that, they do have to document in the report and to the, of what happened. So that's an update. Go ahead, ma'am.
I don't know if this is part of the policy, but I know that at our last meeting, Director Harness talked about the length of time that videos are kept, and that it was our hope that it would be, was it 120 days or was it a year? I can't remember. It was a year. And so, and is that part of this policy? Will we see that?
It had been reviewed and it had been discussed, but right now it still says 120 days. If 20 days, if it's not a specific criteria where we have to hold it for evidentiary reasons. So right now that is still 120. It may change, but right now it has not.
Okay, it's been our recommendation from this body to make it change because of what it does to us in terms of our ability to do oversight. So I'm just using this opportunity to say we would really like to see it be a year or be able for us to, there's no way for us to know. There's no time limit on when people can complain.
Right.
It really hampers our ability to judge whether or not someone was treated fairly if we can't see the video. So I would ask you to bring that thought back. I know we've submitted it as a recommendation, but I hope it doesn't get bypassed.
Absolutely.
Yes, and just to complete that thought, I mean, there was quite a bit of discussion at BPRB, I believe, and OPA as well about whether to extend this, and there were some reasons given for keeping it as it is, but I think the point that was made is that it's very useful and that it should be to the advantage of APD in terms of exonerating officers to have a longer retention period. And so it seems like it's a win-win situation to retain this for as long as possible to do that. And I think that point was made. I think that's what we're here for, is to make that recommendation and recognize that there's other factors involved as well. So thanks for this.
I'm sorry. Our last meeting is recorded. It's on our website. So if anybody wants to see what the reasons are, we went into some detail about that last time.
Okay.
So we would ask that anybody who's making a decision between 120 days and 365 days, take a look, because it's significant.
Chair Waits, and yes, ma'am, Ms. Fine and Dr. Cass, I do understand that you made the recommendation, and the discussion was very lengthy. We are looking at storage, that kind of stuff, and maybe we add more categories. There's a lot that we can do to listen to the recommendation and implement it, but also have to remember the storage capabilities of APD in our databases and stuff like that. So we're just trying to see how we can make this happen and what's appropriate for the department.
And even if it were a trial period, for an experiment to see how long, if you kept things for a year, if you did that for 5 years, would that storage be problematic? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Would it, if you tried it for a 5-year period, you could test it to see whether or not it was worth the money. I get that all of that storage costs money. I get that. But if we're going to do oversight, we can't cut it off in the way that it has been cut off. So I'm just putting in a plug for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair Waits. Commander Campbell, when are you submitting this to the monitor? Do you have a date in mind?
I don't have a date. I am waiting for a couple of other things to come back from Dr. Ginger. So as soon as he sends those, I probably will send it to him through the city attorney. So everything goes back and forth through them.
What would be like your best guess of a range if you could narrow it down that much?
I would say within 2 weeks, but
Okay.
I'm not going to document that anywhere or anything like that because, again, we try to be considerate to Dr. Ginger and his team, especially when they're writing the IMR. So, and we don't want to get this lost in their files.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. It's an
yeah.
important policy.
And it's an important one that we definitely want them to take their time with, so.
Yeah, thank you. Chair Waits, we never have actually made a formal recommendation about the year, but I think that we could take a vote now. We've all talked about it, but we ran into this problem before about like how formal our recommendation was, and so I would like to firm that up by making
Did
a
the
motion.
policy committee not make a recommendation to that end?
No.
Did the staff not? And for the OPA?
Nothing bona fide has occurred.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought it
So-
had.
It's okay. I would like to make a motion that we recommend that year period of time for lapel video, not lapel, sorry, OBRD video storage retention.
Second.
Okay. It's been motioned and second that we make that recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Have the same right? That's for our records.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, that was for us, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Alrighty. Any other questions or comment on 2.8?
No,
Not for
thank
me.
you.
Thank you for your
Thank you
time.
very much.
All right, thank
All
you.
right. Emergency communication on our new priority system. Did I? Oh, I'm sorry.
Update on crimes against children unit.
Update on crimes against children unit. Update on crimes against children's unit.
It was supposed to be the lieutenant in charge of crimes against children.
Okay. So I'm right on schedule then. Come on.
I can't believe they're not here.
Director Harness, do you know anything about why we don't have anybody here for that? I assume the invitation was sent, but I was
Yes.
wondering if there was any kind of feedback from them.
Chair Waits, Vice Chair Galloway, the unit requested the March appearance because of their meeting with the new director of CYFD, which was to occur right around the February meeting because previously they were coming for the February meeting and they requested the March time slot. I don't have any.
Does anybody here from APD know why they're not here?
Can we re-invite them to April? I think this is a
It's really a shame.
very important issue to discuss given the current status of our city.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, members and Chairman Waits. My name is Erica Wilson. I'm the manager of the Emergency Communication Center for the Albuquerque Police Department. On March 1st of this year, we introduced a new priority system, which I believe has been provided to all of you. Instead of a 1 to 3 priority for calls for service, we have changed to a 1 to 5 priority system. Prior, with the 1 to 3 system, we had a lot of different call types that were packed into Priority 1. Everything from a shooting to a dog locked in a vehicle. And I'm not trying to minimize the urgency of a dog locked in a vehicle, but as far as police response, the shooting is something they need to get to because there's more opportunity to apprehend an offender and save the life of somebody because they have to clear the scene first before fire can go in. So we moved to this 5 priority system with priority 1 being an immediate dispatch. Priority 2 is the less violent calls. Priority 3 is disturbance type calls. Priority 4 is public reports where somebody's waiting at a public location. And priority 5 is our very much delayed reports. The other aspect that we changed as of March 1st is we're managing callers' expectations now. In the past, when somebody called and we told them we would send an officer out, we didn't give them any time frame of how long it would take. We're now telling them how long the call could hold, that we would send an officer right away if one's available, but if it's a priority 5 call, it could conceivably hold up to 3 hours. So we're sharing that with the community so they're aware of what to expect, and that way they're not calling back frequently, where's my officer, where's my officer? So we're informing them. We also make a call to the citizen once the call goes overdue, so that way they know we still have your call, we're checking the situation to make sure nothing's changed, to see if we need to upgrade the call or not. The other aspect that we changed as of March 1st is we used to offer people 3 choices to file reports if it was a delayed report. They could file it online with a telephone reporting unit. They could file it online with the CopLogic, which is the online mechanism, or we would send an officer. We offered all 3 choices. Now when a call meets a certain criteria, we only offer telephone reporting or online. We're not offering an officer. And if a citizen demands, the call gets escalated to a supervisor and they address it with them, but we are not sending, again, trying to allow officers more time to deal with community interaction and response and patrol of areas and responding to those emergent type calls. Think what else. We spent 3 hours with every one of the telecommunicator staff with 12 different classes that we offered to them to train them on this. The detail was provided to the field units. The reception has been relatively good. I have had some feedback from the field. The priority 1s and priority 2 calls are pretty close to one another. So in our old system, prior to March 1st, a domestic violence call often was a priority 3, even if both parties were present and it was verbal, and those calls can sometimes hold for some amount of time. In this new system, they're a priority 2. Domestic violence calls have a high incident of lethality, not only for the victim, but for responding officers, as far as the threat and risk, and for the offender even, based on the situation and the volatility of it. So those are now all priority 2s, and that's one significant change that we made in hoping to support and evaluate all the calls that come into us. We handle about 1.1 million incoming phone calls annually. 500,000, and I'm ballparking, is usually what we're dispatching on. When we moved the telephone reporting unit out to emergency communications in March of last year, we're looking at ways to try and increase that unit's utilization, and we've requested some additional staff to put on a swing shift so we could take that burden from the field in even more ways, so they have more time, again, to interact with the community and respond to calls.
Anybody else want to go first?
I do. I was writing notes when you said this. I think you said that you guys are calling back. You were talking about you guys began managing caller expectations. You're calling the caller back if it's taking longer to dispatch an officer?
When you first call us, and my preference is that you don't have to call us because usually you're a victim of crime, but if you call us and we handle that initial interaction, at that time we're telling you then. We're telling you that this is a report call. It may be up to 3 hours before we can get out there. If an officer's available, one will be sent right away.
Right.
But if it goes overdue, we're going to call you again. So what we've been doing in the past is we were not telling anybody any time frames or parameters, and people would call back frequently, where's my officer, where's my officer? Then we started calling once the call went overdue and would call every 30 minutes. That was a lot of manpower time, and the citizens are instructed if anything changes while you're waiting for an officer, call 911, all those things. So we're giving them the instruction and really empowering them to manage their experience with us because we're giving them more data.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys were impressive when I did my police academy thing. You guys were impressive then, but the fact that you can do that, do you worry about overtaxing the resources that you have available by calling these people back every so often?
Because we're only calling back the once now,
Okay.
the dispatcher is actually making fewer phone calls.
Awesome.
So it's freeing them up to help support the other dispatchers, because usually it was my 8th dispatcher, the one who didn't have a radio, that was doing the support type. So that person's no longer making those calls.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks.
A million calls, that's so insane. I want to understand more about 1, 2, and 3. So you said that on 1, that, for example, a shooting, and you said on 2 that it would be domestic violence. I'm assuming that you're not hearing a report of weapons or threats with that would be a 1. If there was weapons or threats, that would be a 1, or shots fired is a 1. I'm trying to understand the difference between 1, 2, and 3, and you gave us examples of 1, and I am looking for 2 and 3.
All right.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chairman Waits and Committee Member Fine. The priority system 1 through 5. 1 is imminent threat to life type calls. You have a multicolor, almost looks like street lamp.
I see it. Right.
Hopefully, I don't know if it's a print in color, but that is imminent threat to life. So that's shootings, stabbings, armed robberies that just occurred, those kind of incidents. Priority 2s are incidents where there's the potential for harm, but there are not weapons involved. So those calls are accidents with injuries, domestic violence calls, fights between people. I don't know why I just balled up my fist, but fights between people where there's the potential for injury, those are priority 2s. Priority 3s are more nuisance-based incidences. It would be somebody who's trespassing on a property, isn't actively in a fight with somebody. That would be a priority 3. Those are dispatched hopefully within 30 minutes is our target. Now we're only 14 days into this, so we're still evaluating and tweaking, but that's the first 3 priorities. Then priority 4 should hold an hour, and priority 5 will hold 3 hours. In the old system, 1, 2, and 3 held, 1 was an immediate dispatch, 2s held 20 to 30 minutes, and 3s held for an hour. But the reality of it was we had priority 3s holding 6 and 7 hours at times.
Jeez.
So we're hoping to spread this out a little bit and better manage the emergencies, plus the apprehension of the offender.
I see now that this is in our packets, but without you saying it out loud, the people who watch this show
100%.
wouldn't know.
No,
and
you're
so
fine.
it's
You're
important for
fine.
people to understand.
You're fine.
Okay.
Yes, I have a question for you. So I'm looking at all these priorities. Which ones do you send your service aides out on so they can, where the police officers don't need to go?
Chairperson Waits and Chair Member St. John, the matrix that you have right behind it, I believe, hopefully will go by each call type and show you what kind of call becomes each priority. If you don't have that, I'll make sure that you get it. That's it.
Okay, yes, I see it.
Blue and yellow.
It's a matrix for each call type, and it lists what details go, I don't know if that's up, that's not up, to each call type. Either way, I can do it. Restate your question for me.
I just wanted to know what kind of calls do you send the service aides out on?
Within each call, it depends on the category. If there's any threat of safety, we do not send the PSAs. But if it's, for example, a vehicle burglary, there's no offender in the area, we use the PSAs. That's always our first go-to. If it doesn't meet the criteria for telephone reporting. So we go telephone reporting, then the PSAs if available, and then officers. So it's in a tier effect. In the blue line, you'll see where it says assignment.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Chair Waits, what's the trigger for you following up with a callback? Is it, you monitor the status of this call in terms of what APD is displaying, or is it strictly rely on the original caller to call you back?
Chairman Waits and Dr. Cass, the call is initiated by my CAD system. It'll tell me when the call goes overdue.
Okay.
It runs a clock timer, so when it hits 60 minutes, it'll get a backlight, and so it alerts us to then call. We don't expect the citizen to call. We need to manage your expectations as our customer.
Thank you.
Great.
One last one. What was your name again?
I'm sorry, my name is Erica Wilson.
Okay, Ms. Wilson, Thank you so much for coming to present to us. It was so clear that you run such a tight ship that I just, tend to trust anything you say. I haven't been able to study these 10 codes, but I do think that what you've presented here in these 5 categories that I can kind of process in this period of time do seem to make a lot of sense. And I want to thank you for coming and letting us know about these changes, because they're definitely things I think about. I think about how this stuff works when I'm on my ride-alongs and wonder about what improvements can be made. And so it's cool to see that, there are some improvements in the works and being implemented. So thank you.
I have one more.
Appreciate that.
So I thought I read somewhere, and I could be wrong, so just tell me. You're wrong, Joanne. But I thought I read somewhere that they changed the coding on domestic violence calls to 3 different numbers to give the police officer more information. Did I make that up?
Chairman Waits and Member Fine, we still have the one code for 1015, which is domestic violence. We had expanded 30 calls, which are juveniles, into 3 categories to be able to better track them. That could be the one that you're thinking of.
Child abuse. That's right.
Abuse.
Child abuse. You're right.
Yeah. But we still are using the 15. The other thing that we worked on with our staff on is we have a couple of catch-all codes, which are 31 for suspicious and 39. Did I just do that backwards?
We wouldn't be able to tell.
We have some catch-all codes that we're trying to get things pushed where we used to always put them in a certain call type, and we're trying to get them more descriptive so it lets the officer know what they're responding on, even though my initial comments that I enter into the CAD system should explain what they're responding on.
Well, I think on separating out the 10 code, I remember when it has to do with children then,
Yeah.
I remember reading it and thinking, what a great idea, that the different number means a different thing to the officer. That's a quick way of giving them better information. So, thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much.
All right.
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
That is that Deputy Chief Garcia, if you can find out for us what the holdup was with crimes against children, just in case you don't know, we had asked for an update on what the department had learned after Omar Varela and Victoria Martins and the 7-year-old girl, the more recent case. And we learned that there were special orders given out for cause and that there were learnings. I think we had invited the lieutenant for crimes against children to come and speak to us about that, because we didn't think that we wanted to make sure the police department had an opportunity to explain to the public the changes they made and why they made them, and what they anticipated. We also expected to get an update on their meeting with CYFD. So not having them here today is really disappointing, and I'm hoping that somebody besides us can encourage them to come.
Chair Wade, Board Member Fine, this is the first I heard about CAC supposed to be here. I'll ensure that they're here next month to give you an update on that. And I'll be here as well to ensure that somebody can.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. Report from City Council.
Chairman Waits, board members, as I'm sure you're aware, we withdrew the board appointments from the council's agenda following some further review and discussions. We are still considering the 3 candidates for appointment, but we wanted to kind of take a step back and interview some other possible candidates. We're doing that now, and we should have our recommendations here within the next few days. Once we have those, we will, as we've discussed before, share those with the outreach committee, share those names and contact information with you so you can meet with them. And if scheduling works out well, we're hopeful that we would have those appointments introduced at the April 1st City Council meeting. In regards to the ordinance, some things have kind of changed with that from the last time I reported out. At the upcoming meeting on Monday, City Council meeting on Monday, March 18th, 01823 will be on the agenda and will be able to be commented on. But it will be deferred to the special City Council meeting that's been set for Thursday, March 21st.
So this Monday's really discussion, right?
Chairman Waits, board member Fine, yes.
Okay.
And that may be just kind of public discussion. Councilors may just listen to comments and then may not kind of comment or discuss any changes within them on the dais. The special council meeting was scheduled to hear public comments on the proposed changes. Some city councilors heard from some neighborhood groups that they wanted to review and be able to provide comments on this. So that was kind of one of the impetuses for this special city council meeting. We're going to be doing a little extra outreach and notice as well for the meeting. So we'll be sending out a meet advisory, and then it'll also be going out on the Office of Neighborhood Coordination's weekly e-newsletter that goes out every Monday, just to kind of make more people aware about the meeting on Thursday the 21st. From the special meeting, the ordinance will be deferred again to the April 1st City Council meeting, and it'll be for final action on that agenda for April 1st.
Okay.
And with that, I stand for any questions.
Any questions? I just really want to stress how important getting those board members are. I know we've done it before, we've talked about it before, and if we just lose one member here, we're in trouble. So please stress that to the city council, please.
Chairman Waits, yes, sir, I will.
Okay. Any other comments?
Can you give us any more insight as to what happened? Because the three of us were meeting with the three proposed candidates, and within an hour that had been pulled. So, kind of left us feeling a little bit like we've got egg on our face, and we didn't have anything to do with that. So is there anything you can offer for that?
Chairman Waits, Board Member Galloway, and this was a tough decision to make and something that we definitely didn't want to do ourselves, and we apologize for the timing of that. Just some things had come up, and we want to just make sure that we're making the correct appointments for the board that show an unbiased, apolitical board, and that has members that understand the current situation of the police department and oversight and the reform efforts that are happening. So we apologize for the timing and kind of going back, but our conclusion that we came to was that it was probably needed to just take that step back and then be able to move forward from there. We're still considering the three appointees, but we just thought we better meet with some other folks as well.
Certainly appreciate the due diligence. It's not going to serve anybody if we bring new board members on that aren't going to quite be able to handle the work that we do or the commitments or whatever the case may be, that they may find themselves leaving the board. So I appreciate that. But yeah, maybe a little more thorough from the onset would be appreciated. Thanks.
Chairman Waits, Board Member Galloway, I think we learned some lessons, and we'll be making some changes moving forward. So.
Chair Waits, thank you. Mr. Moya, I certainly appreciate that you guys are taking your time. I mean, my feeling is that we've waited this long. We don't need to necessarily rush into the next month. I'm just wondering how many, okay, so you think they'll be prepared for the April 1st City Council meeting? Is that what you said? Your next selections?
Chairman Waits, Board Member Van Deventer, that's what we're hoping for, at least to be, and that's just to be introduced, to be in the hopper for the council to take action on. So the process is that the appointments will get introduced at a city council meeting. They're usually held over to the following city council meeting for final action. So if they're introduced on April 1st, they would be for final action on April 14th.
Okay, well, my question then is, does that give them time to come and watch a full board meeting? Because I believe I know everyone in the audience, and it doesn't seem like there are any potential applicants out there. And I know that had come up, and I think that's a part of making sure they understand what this entails, is having them, watch the process at least one go-around.
Chairman Waits, Member Van Deventer, yeah, that's a fair point. Looks like your next meeting's on April 11th, so if April 15th is a more appropriate goal for introduction, then I think we can work with that.
Okay, and then the follow-up question to that is, have you narrowed it down to a new small pool of potential candidates, or how, like, logistically, how is this board involvement that we've discussed going to be able to take place in this window of time? I certainly don't get me wrong, I don't want to stretch the process out. I just want to make sure that the process that we've discussed exists. That way we don't do another one of these. And I think that we did discuss the outreach committee getting to meet with the new people coming on or maybe coming on. Are they going to be able to do that, or are they going to get some information?
Chairman Waits, Board Member Van Deventer, yeah, hopefully within the next few days we'll have the names and contact information for the outreach committee. And yeah, we won't be moving the names forward until the outreach committee meets with them.
My only question has to do with, once they get appointed, since they were supposed to be appointed in a February to February time, do we change the time frame from
Cycle
May,
time,
or how do we do that? Because they'll be short-circuited if we don't change the time frame.
Chairman Waits, Board Member Fine, are you talking in terms of their
cycle.
their terms?
Yeah,
Their terms.
No, the terms would stay ending in February, but they would.
Then they'll get 2.5-year appointments, not 3-year appointments.
Yeah, it goes by whether completing partial terms or full terms. So I believe there was one vacancy that the term actually expired in February, so they would be on their first full term.
Yeah, I don't know the answer.
And then
I
the
just
other two would
wanted to
be-
bring it to your attention.
Yeah, the other two members would be completing partial terms. If that, hope
So
I'm
does that
making
mean
sense
that
with
they're eligible for 2 more terms after that?
Yes, if they complete a partial
Okay,
term.
that
yes,
makes
then
sense.
Then they'll be
Okay.
available for 2.
Okay, so they're not getting short-circuited. They're actually committing for more than 2 terms.
Well, that would hold true for everybody,
The
but the
two.
one position that would be coming on in its own term. And I think, I don't know, I would be comfortable with managing that expectation and just letting that person know, sorry, your term is going to start in May, but it will end in February 3 years from now. I think that's fine. I mean, that's,
I just wanted to make sure we had it on the table
Yeah.
so that we don't get into another knot.
that would be my vote, is manage that expectation.
Any other, Valerie, I'm sorry.
I agree with you, because after that point, they could still stay for another 3 years, so I don't think it'll be a big issue.
Yeah.
At the time. Thank you.
Any other comment? Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
All right. No one's from the mayor's office? City attorney's office?
I'm going to use the short person podium here. Good evening, Chairman Waits and members of the board. There's very little to report from the City Attorney's Office right now. You have Policy 258 for comment. I understand that you're going to be discussing it today. The training on the use of force policies is still in the development process and going through that process, and will be submitted to the monitor at the end of March. And then a process will begin of going back and forth to finalize it. I don't have much else to report, so if you have any questions. I don't.
No?
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Chris, CPCs?
She's here. and
We have a
Dolores is
CPC
here.
member. You're going to have to sit up in that chair. I didn't see you. I didn't see you there.
Usually largely conspicuous. Chairman Waits, board members, what a pleasure it is
Welcome.
to see you again. We are going to every other month for our meetings and extending our meetings beyond 7:30 to half an hour. So the alternate months we have executive meetings and planning meetings and things like that. I've just heard that dispatch is coming in May, which was a new one on me, thrilled though I am to have her. We're going to go to panel discussions with a specific theme, and I'm going to include all of you in our emails from now on. So if your committee pertains to what the theme of the panel discussion is, we would really like you to come and participate. For example, Ms. Fine, I was thinking in May of the Department of Children's Safety, with representative from CYFD, with someone from APS, and your presence on the panel would be wonderful, but that may have changed. That's really all I have to say. We're losing 2 members, so as this is on TV, if anybody wants to apply, lives in the Valley area, that would be wonderful. And that's really, I'm sure there's something else I have to say, but
Sure.
You
it
can always come
wait.
back, darling, before this evening's over.
Yeah.
What?
If it comes back to you, just come back up to the microphone.
No, it won't come back before the evening's over.
So you're from the Valley CPC? Can you?
No, she's from
Can you give them the information, what CPC you're from?
I thought I said that if you happen to live in the Valley Command area. I said that. Do you need to know the boundaries?
No.
No.
They might on TV.
Okay.
Do you know the boundaries?
Do I know the boundaries? Yes.
Some people don't know the boundaries.
It's a little bit of tramway to the north. It's city limits north and south, the river to the west, and I-25 to the east. We're actually in many ways the largest, even though we're long and narrow. And I venture to say that as we contain both Old Town, New Town, and a lot of the other older areas of Albuquerque, Morelos, Martinez Town, I would say that we're one of the most diverse. And I am concerned that we have not got all of the representatives. That's another thing we're going to work on. I'm planning to go to neighborhood association meetings.
Good.
Okay.
I look forward to seeing you at your meeting, whenever it is that you have it.
I thank you, Ms. Fine.
Thank you.
Member Fine.
Chris?
Isn't it Dolores? Dorothy?
Chair
Welcome,
Waits,
Chris.
Board members, Chris Sylvan, Community Outreach Manager with the Albuquerque Police Department. The only thing I'm really going to report out is something I forgot to mention last time I was up here. What we're doing with the CPCs right now is we're standardizing their agendas, meeting minutes, and their annual reports. So, for example, on their agenda, APD is going to present not only on the crime report, they're going to report use of force, any SOP updates, recruitment, and the Compliance Bureau is going to be at all the meetings. So that's one of the big changes, and so far it's been really positive, and it hasn't extended the meeting any longer than it potentially could have, because there was some concerns that it was like, oh, you're adding all this stuff to our meeting and it's going to go longer, but no change. No change. Okay. So with that, I stand for questions.
Thank you for being here, Chris.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Chris.
Thank you for being here.
This one
Alrighty.
more CPC.
Any other
She's right here.
any other CPC members? Okay, we'll move on then. Oh, you coming down?
Is she coming down? Okay.
Oh,
Ramp.
got the rail.
Okay. Be careful.
Oh, it's me.
You could just talk loud from there.
It's always good to see you.
It is always good to see you.
And why do you say that, ladies and gentlemen?
because we like you, that's why.
Thank you. All right. Dorothy Woodward from the Northeast CPC. I'm the secretary there. We came together in January. Part of this was my idea of bringing all the CPCs, the 6 CPCs, to come together to work in collaboration so that we might have more participation from the community and so that we can explore ways in which to make that participation more diverse in age, gender, race, ethnic groups, and sex. I'm seeing too many people in some meetings that look like me. So, we're looking at diversity there and also diversity of applicants for our CPCs. Our goal is also to help one another, to help, I call it inter-cooperation, collaboration among CPCs so that we may help one another to cross our boundaries, our areas, help other CPCs to get the public involved. We need more participation, especially as we are looking at the possibility of the City Council examining what we are putting forward in a proposal for an ordinance so that we may continue in perpetuity long after CASA is satisfied and the monitor is gone. But this is going to take some more work. We are having our next strategy session, bringing all CPCs together again on May 4th. Ms. St. John was there at the one that we had in January 26th. I would like to see some of you attend that and bring your wisdom with you. Any questions?
Where's it going to be, Dorothy?
Where is it going to be? I don't think we have a location yet. Do we, Mr.? Probably at the police academy, yes, the training academy, on a Saturday.
Okay.
Usually a Saturday.
Would that be appropriate for members of the public who are curious to come? Is that appropriate?
We didn't allow it the last time.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Harness was instrumental in that session. It was about 4 hours. We also had a facilitator by the name of Everett Hill. Some of you may know him. And then there were 3 of us, CPC members, who helped to pull this off. So one person from the Valley who is now leaving Farrah Council, our recently, chair for Northeast, and me. So we met often with Mr. Hill and with Chris Sylvan and Janet Carrillo in order to formulate what we were going to do in putting this strategy session together. Who else will be there and helping us to prepare or to facilitate on that day of May 4th? I am not sure right now. Our first gathering to put this together and start determining what we're going to do for that session is this Saturday. So there will be, again, I think 3 or 4 of us. 3 or 4 of us. 2 from the Valley and 2 from the Northeast.
Great.
So we will be meeting and with Mr. Hill and Chris Sylvan and Janet Carrillo.
Okay.
If you have any suggestions, especially for cross-sectioning or inter-collaboration, and for building diversity. among voting members and the public.
Thank you very much.
Anything else? Chairman Waits?
I don't have any suggestions for you, but I do applaud your efforts to create a more diverse CPC. Thank you for doing that.
Okay.
Oh, my.
All right.
You got to be around me a little bit more sometimes. I push on that like you can't believe.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Sylvan, could you come up for one more second? It would be helpful for those people that are at home who may be interested in serving on a CPC to have an information on how to contact you so you can direct them to which one they live in.
Absolutely.
Could you give us, say your name and your phone number and all that stuff?
Yeah, I can do that. It's Chris Sylvan. I'm the Community Outreach Manager with the Albuquerque Police Department. And how you reach me is C. Sylvan, Sylvan, at cabq.gov. It's spelled like the Learning Center. Or you can either email our CPC at cabq.gov. That's another way to reach us. And you are going to laugh, but I do not have my office phone number memorized. I don't memorize numbers anymore.
Okay, next time you come and talk to us, next time you come and talk to us, bring that number with you.
Okay, it's on my business card, and I don't have one with me, but
Write it on your hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. All right. Thanks, Joanne. All righty. All right. Anyone from APOA? No? Okay. Mr. Harness, CPOA.
Chair Waits, honorable board. I'll give my report and then we can move to the action item under my agenda, the recommendation for 2-58. First, PPRB votes for February 27th, 3-1, Field Services, 3-2, Investigative Services, 3-3, Special Services Bureau, 3-4, Professional Services Bureau, 3-5, Administrative Bureau. My vote was to remove them from the remove them as standard operating procedures, so the entire policy is being struck. 3-31, physical fitness testing, and 1-44, false alarms reduction. I voted to move those on. And 1-2, the social media policy, I voted to table. The POB comment period for 3-31 and 1-44 expires on March 28th. At the PPRB meeting on 3-6, 2-14 cell site simulator technology, 1-78 police service aid program, and 2-4 use of service respirators. I voted to move those on. The POB comment period expires on those three policies on the 11th of April. I spoke with, emailed with Anna Erickson from the Academy, and they are planning to provide a shortened version of the Citizens Police Academy in spring. They will attempt to time that to work with the new board members when we know when they will be appointed. So based upon Mr. Moya's report this evening, it looks like they should be able to attend a shortened Citizens Police Academy relatively soon after being appointed.
Good.
The board will receive the paragraph 298 data at the end of May when it is released to Dr. Ginger. There will also be a guidebook along with that data to help interpret the data. This is according to Dr. Winograd. The drafts of the 2018 semi-annual reports, the first one has been assembled and we have the tables and the data. The second, the tables are being assembled and we will have them relatively soon. Last month during the public comment period, Sylvester Hollander appeared stating he filed a complaint with CPOA and he did not know what happened with his complaint. His complaint was CPC 082-18. The board reviewed his complaint in May of 2018. His letter was mailed certified but returned to our office unclaimed. I spoke with Mr. Holland and we mailed him a copy of his findings letter regular mail. Apparently he has problems getting certified mail at his address, so we sent it to him regular mail, and I believe he received it. We have approximately 80 cases that are beyond the 9-month period. Approximately 25 of those were designated for mediation, but we do not now have mediation. RISC has provided me with 3 outside investigative firms, but it appears that only 2 of them will work because they don't. One only has 1 investigator, and the other 2 have multiple investigators. So we will interview them, and we will procure a contract for outside investigators. The board admin position has been created at a level E12, and it should be posted within a couple of weeks for hiring. And other than that, I stand for questions.
Yeah.
Start now.
What's the board admin position that you were referring to?
The agency is going to be hiring a full-time admin to support the board. So you will have an admin solely dedicated to the board.
Thank you.
And what will be our involvement in that hire?
I'm sorry. Chair Waits, member Fine. As we've done in the past, if any members want to participate in the interviewing process, we will keep you appraised.
Thank you so much for the update on the cases that are past the 9 months. 25, you said designated for mediation, but there is no mediation currently in place. So what happens with those cases?
Chair Waits, Vice Chair Galloway, if we don't institute a mediation policy relatively soon, then we will have them investigated.
Okay. And the other, 55? Can you give us an idea of what's going on with those or where they stand as far as getting them caught up?
Some of them are part of a performance improvement plan, and then others will be farmed out to the hired contracted investigators. Yesterday, I opened up the 66th investigation for essentially the 10 weeks of the first year. So we're at record volumes for complaints at this point.
Sure. It sounds like you need the resources. Will you keep us up to date on those? And as they're progressing, just kind of let us know. Do you have an idea once you hire or contract this investigative firm, how long it should take to go through those? Just ballpark.
Chair Waits, Vice Chair Galloway, that will depend on the number of investigators that they have, and so I can't give you a definitive answer as to how long that will take.
Do you have a time frame in mind that you would like to see, like if you had all of your hopes and dreams come true for these cases?
Well, Chair Waits, Vice Chair Galloway, I suppose if they had the requisite number of investigators, that we could assign them all out and have them returned within a 90 to 120 day time frame.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Zoe?
Okay, so you're hiring an investigator. Are you hiring these individuals? Are you going through firms, local firms in town, or how did you post and get the information from these applicants?
Chair Waits, Board Member St. John, these are contracted firms that are approved vendors through the City of Albuquerque.
Okay.
And how long does that process take for you to secure a contract?
It's your first
Chair
time.
Waits, Board Member Fine, I think if recent, I think it would probably take us 6 to 8 weeks to procure a contract, to go through requisitions and all that.
Jeez.
Okay, so 80 cases, 55 are part of a personnel action and 25 are assigned to mediation?
Chair Waits, Member Van Deventer, no, I did not say that. I said of the 80, approximately 25 were designated for mediation. A portion of that 55 are in a performance improvement plan.
Okay. Am I allowed to ask how many are not a part of the performance improvement plan? Because that would be, because if I'm understanding correctly, those that are not a part of a PIP are, those are the ones that you are sending to an outside firm. Did I get that right?
Chair Waits, Member Van Deventer, that's correct.
Okay, so roughly how many are we, how many cases roughly are we contracting out?
Chair Waits, Member Van Deventer, if you're speaking only of the backlog, I would say we would probably be looking at the neighborhood of about 35.
Okay, and so these are from the year, these date back to 2015, is that correct? I'm trying to square that with the presentation you made most recently about the backlog. I believe it began in 2015, am I mistaken?
Chair Waits, Member Van Deventer, no, it's 2016.
Okay. Is it possible, can we send all of those cases that are not assigned to mediation, can we contract out all of those cases just in for the purposes of getting complainants their results more quickly?
Chair Waits, excuse me, Member Vanderby, if that's the board's wishes, I can certainly not have any of them mediated and have them all investigated.
No, sorry. Of those cases that are not assigned to mediation.
They're not currently assigned. They were set aside for mediation, but the mediation program expired. We thought we were going to have the mediation program come back relatively quickly, but in the time frame, we had a new judge assignment, and the stipulations to reinstitute the mediation program have been delayed based upon a judge assignment as one of the factors.
Okay, so let me clarify what I was asking. Because we have a chunk that's for mediation. Maybe it's not an official assignment, it hasn't occurred, but like a mediation chunk, and then all the rest. And then the pile that's all the rest, that contains cases that are a part of a PIP, plus others that are not part of a PIP. I'm wondering if that second chunk that's not for mediation, in total, can we assign all of those? Because those cases that might be wrapped up in the PIP, if we make the decision to not contract those out, those complainants might be waiting longer than they might otherwise need to, and they might have already been waiting since 2016 in some cases. So I'm just thinking about expediting the processing of these outstanding cases. Can we contract all of those out, or are the ones that are a part of a PIP action, are those off limits to us for? Okay. I wonder if the board should consider, so what exactly happened with mediation? Because the last I heard was that we finally had our mediation program in place. I vaguely remember something about some sort of term limit that we discussed at a compliance plan meeting. It might be in the CASA, but we discussed extending, like the mediation is in a pilot program, and we discussed extending that program. I wasn't aware that the mediation program expired. Just generally, where does that stand, the mediation program?
Chair Waits, Board Member Galloway, the mediation program was brought to before the court because in order to mediate, it was necessary to have a court order. I believe the paragraph is 283, which the Department of Justice and the city and ourselves entered into an agreement for a 6-month trial, and that 6-month trial expired. The parties discussed expanding it for a year. However, that would require new motions and new stipulations. Those new motions and stipulations have not been filed at this point because of the change in judge.
Okay. I don't know. I wonder what everyone else thinks of this. I tend to be a big fan of mediation. I think that it's what works. I think it's much more effective than discipline is. I wonder, though, if, we're talking about really old cases, I wish I had like a pile of books or data or something to stand on, but like my hunch is that if a case is already somewhat old, that mediation might not be as effective. And in order to work our way through the backlog, maybe we should go ahead and say, hey, that stack of 25, if we're going to be farming out some of our cases, maybe we should move that those get farmed out as a part of the contract. Just a thought, I wonder.
Well, I agree with what you said. I mean, these have been waiting. Mediation's not available. So let's get this done and send it to the independent investigators that Director Harness is going to hire. I agree with you.
What do you think?
I tend to lean that way too, but I guess prior to that conversation is when we had a meeting of the parties at one point and the stakeholders, I want to say maybe within the last 3 months, 2-3 months, there was a conversation about the mediation program that took place there. And one of the concerns was that it wasn't as effective as all had hoped it would be. And I'm wondering if, to your point, that may be because the cases are so old. Okay, so I guess that's my question. The cases that are being mediated, is there a time frame at which it becomes kind of, we're not going to put this through to mediation, we're going to investigate it or administratively close it or whatever the case may be? Do you guys have that kind of line in the sand?
Chair Waits, Vice Chair Galloway, no, we don't. And if you recall the standards for mediation, these are very minor issues that would be eligible for mediation even in the first place. So I don't know what the time frame is for Judge Browning to come up to speed. That's an issue that's on the agenda this evening. And certainly we can forego even attempting to mediate those cases and simply have them go to the investigators.
And just kind of to tie up my question, is it your expectation that once you've reached a certain point, like once it's been a year, for example, since an incident occurred, that the likelihood of somebody wanting to take additional time to mediate these relatively minor circumstances would be kind of lower occurrence, that would actually be successful? I mean, does that make sense?
Certainly, Chair Waits, Vice Chair Galloway, sure, that certainly makes sense. I'm just reporting out the numbers as you requested and providing some context. So,
Sure. This is
I
not-
think that if we continue at the volume at which we continue, even when bringing mediation back, I believe we're going to have to continue to have the use of the independent investigators to prevent a backlog.
Okay, well, that will go into it. So this is not in any way, these questions are not in any way a criticism of what you reported out. This is a thinking forward and how can we mitigate that kind of a backlog if we have that again, and also up the chances of a successful mediation program. But also, if we're going to find ourselves in a perpetual state of backlogged cases, I would be curious to have you kind of crunch the numbers for us and see if it is more or less expensive to just hire another investigator or two and conserve those resources versus farming somebody out. Something to think about in that process.
Chair Waits, Vice Chair Galloway, as I believe I reported out, maybe not last month, but the month before, ISR is going to be doing a work study for our investigators and our investigative timelines.
Awesome, thank you.
Well, that's okay. Well, she kind of repeated something that I was going to say, but and I understand where you're coming from, but we really, it's just a guess. I mean, I've seen people 2-3 years later at my previous job at the DA's office, they want their case done. So I really think it's just a guessing game.
Well, we just heard from the 911 call center manager, and they call people back. So, it may be a point, if it's not going to be for 2 months from now, to send them a letter and say, here's the thing, we have this slated for mediation. It's probably going to take us 2 more months to get that done. Do you want to, if we're going to assume you want to proceed unless we hear otherwise from you, and give them a chance to opt out.
Could you just give us an example of a typical backlog case? And I mean, what are the circumstances that create a typical case, if there is such a thing? I'm just curious to understand what a backlog case is about.
Well, Chair Waits, Board Member Dr. Cass, given our case volume, we have to prioritize which cases we have to ensure are going to be within the timelines. So certainly the severity of the case and what is involved in that investigation will cause the backlog. So for 13218, well, we had to take the investigator out of rotation, and she spent all of her time on that case to make sure that the timelines were in. And so all of the other cases, which might be about a traffic accident report, or it's minor and or less severe, causes the backlog. So we've had to take each investigator out of rotation this year, or not this year, but within the last year. And if they have cases that are already assigned to them, and another case takes precedence or priority, that's how it develops.
My bigger
Thank you.
concern, thank you. My bigger concern on backlog cases are the use of force and officer-involved shooting cases that we still don't have from the ABD, and you were going to check on that. I know it's a different backlog, but I just wondered if you had given that some thought, if you had learned anything about why we're not getting those cases.
Chair Waits, Member Fine, I believe that's actually the discussion for 2-58, the Force Review Board.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I don't know for sure, but like what my intuition is telling me is that maybe we should just have these cases that were set aside for possible mediation go to our outside investigators just to kind of make them complete, because right now there is no timeline set up for when this mediation might occur. There's this whole like, first the judge has to get on the bench, and then there has to be a whole discussion about whether or not mediation is going to continue. That might end up taking several months, and these are cases that are already quite old. I kind of feel like if we're sending roughly 25 cases out for independent investigation, maybe we should add these to them just to merely for the purpose of just getting them done.
We have, according to Mr. Harness' expectation, we got 2 months in the investigator business as well to find vendors that are investigators that we can pawn them out to. So we're months away from reality anyway. So that's a frustration. And one that we have to fix. I also have to say something about, I don't think it's my job as a board member to tell the director how to do it. I can tell you that I'm tired of hearing they're not done. And I don't want the same report next time. Everything we ask about, you can't get there from here because, and I understand that this is the city and that's how everybody operates, but it's not good enough for me, in my opinion. It's not okay. And I don't know what you do about that, but I think that's his to figure out myself.
Well, once again, I agree with Board Member Bennett that these cases, I don't want them to sit here tonight and say, well, if this happens, if that happens, then these 25 cases will be investigated. So I don't know, what about we take a vote to send these 25 cases to the outside investigator?
We don't have one. We don't have an outside investigator.
And I agree with Member Fine, like we're not even at that point yet. We haven't hit that particular stop sign.
So how do you propose that we keep track of these?
I say we give Director Harness until the May board meeting to come back and tell us what the solution is going to be.
How it was resolved.
I don't even know how it's resolved, but what the solution's going to be. Are we going to mediate these, or are we going to farm these out?
I just think it's micromanaging, I do.
But don't you think, wasn't it just stated that mediation's kind of out of the picture now?
They're both out of the picture because of the timeline.
Both of them.
Both of them?
So in a couple of months, by Director Harness's expectations, we should know which of the two is going to be the more viable option to dispense of these cases.
And you just tell us when we get to
what
that
you
place,
decide.
what you decide and why. That's it.
So we don't lose this. Can we go ahead and ask this to put on the agenda?
For May.
For May, yes. Okay.
I won't lose it.
So it doesn't
Okay.
get lost.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I really was looking for everyone's suggestions. I'm not interested in micromanaging either. It was just an idea. I have no strong feelings about which way it goes. I guess I was just thinking about like what could be most expedient is sort of my interest at this stage with these particular cases. So I'm completely fine with that.
Expediency would get my vote for sure, but it's not available to us at this
I
moment.
see what you're saying.
We just don't know which it is. So
Mr. Harness, you'll make sure we get that on the agenda.
Chair Waits, absolutely. I think that there needs to be a more broad examination of investigations and timelines and obligations. There is no statute of limitations for a complaint. There's no limitation on the type of complaint that we investigate. The investigative timelines are relatively short in compared to practices across the nation. And I would appreciate that the board have a broader discussion in aiding the agency with investigations and timelines.
How so? What do you propose? Because this came about either as an ordinance or CASA compliance issue originally. So what would you like to see us to do? How can we help you facilitate that?
Chair Waits and Vice Chair Galloway, there were and have been discussions about establishing a tier evaluation for complaints for the priority of their investigation. There has been the discussion of modifying the settlement agreement because the settlement agreement timelines are simply a factor based upon the collective bargaining agreement with the APOA. So there are options that could be brought forward in discussions with the Department of Justice and the monitoring team to have those change.
And obviously, the additional staff for farming out the cases to an outside investigative agency, that's an option as well.
Chair Waits and Vice Chair Galloway, certainly, and we are also adding a position of complaint coordinator. So there's going to be a full-time position for complaint intake, which should help some of the efficiencies as well. We have the analyst position that is still within our budget, that is unfulfilled, that in discussions with HR, we can fill that position. We simply would change the job description to match the needs of the agency, and then we would continue to have a services contract for the data as we do now.
Thank you.
So earlier you brought up 132, and I wanted to circle back with you on this case because at the last meeting we requested that you we made a motion that you request the IA file so that we could review it and understand the non-concurrence letter. I had complained that there just wasn't enough context for me to understand what was happening in that letter. Can you provide us with an update on that, please?
Chair Waits, Member Vandeventer, the request was sent to Internal Affairs and the Chief, and I understand that they're formulating a response, but I have not received it yet.
It was my understanding that we were going to talk about that in case review, that we were going to, the next case review meeting.
Oh, is that what it was?
It's supposed to be on the agenda.
Yeah, it's on the agenda
my
for the
apologies.
case review. Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
To discuss that with Mr. Harness, and so that we can understand it and bring it back to the board.
Oh, okay, I didn't know. I was just trying to make sure we didn't lose track of it. I didn't realize that was happening.
You're right. I mean, we did talk about it, and
okay.
We do need to get through that.
Thank you. And then one last thing is, following up on, in December, we sent 132 back for a second time for further investigation of specific items. On February 7th, I asked you for a status update about that, and you said that the file was not in hand, that it was still with the chief, and that you would advise that when it came back into hand. We got the chief's non-concurrence memo on January 15th, which would indicate that that the chief was done with our file by then, and that we should have it back now that we're 2 months out from that date. Can you give us a status update on that, please?
Chair Waits, Member Vandeventer, I do have the file back, but it came back after the chief's non-concurrence memo because there was an appeal of the findings of the CPOA for the sustained officer, and there was a pre-disciplinary hearing that occurred. So at this point, we do have the file back.
So we'll be ready for case review.
Okay, is that what we should expect for the remainder of the investigation to occur, and then for that to go back before the case review subcommittee? And like, if so, on what sort of timeline? Next meeting, or will it take a couple of meetings?
Chair Waits, Board Member Vandeventer, at this point, I'm not sure when we would have the investigation to resubmit to the Case Review Committee.
But we'll have it on the agenda to talk about the non-concurrence letter.
Chair Waits, Member Fine, yes. I provided some months ago the findings from the I-file and a detailed listing of the SOP violations. I did that report to this full board, the differences between the I-file and our file and our findings. And I provided those findings, and I will be prepared to discuss them again at Case Review.
But
this is so annoying.
I mean, okay, but that was just a part of that request we made when we sent the case back for further analysis. And this is not the first time we've discussed this. I mean, are you going to comply with our request to investigate certain matters further, or, I mean, or what? Where does this go?
Chair Waits, Member Vandeventer, I have not said that I would not comply with your request for reinvestigation, and we will do that.
Okay, that's great. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
We're going to talk about the other backlog in two, what'd you say? What was the item on the agenda?
258.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's move on and close this up.
He's not done. He's got the 258s right there.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with it.
Chair Waits, Honorable Board, last week I provided you a copy of, I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago you were provided a copy of the PPR version of the past, the version that passed PPRB of 2-58, Force Review Board. As I pointed out, it did not include a mechanism for this board to review what will be level 3 uses of force. So members Galloway and Vandeventer requested that I draft a recommendation for the policy. So earlier this week, I forwarded to you my recommendation. My recommendation is 2-586B, paragraph B7, shall read that the Force Review Administrative Lieutenant or designee provide copies of the FRB investigation presentations and FRB report to the Civilian Police Oversight Agency Board within 15 calendar days for their review.
Is that in our attachments, in our board packets?
Member Waits, Board Member Fine, it is not.
This is the one I read, but I just want to see it again.
I'm satisfied.
Yeah, I think we need a motion.
Okay.
I move that we accept the language you drafted. Thank you for doing it.
Chair Waits, Vice Chair Galloway, I believe you would need to move that this become a recommendation from the board.
That's the motion.
That's the motion, that we formally recommend this to the powers that be at APD.
Can I get a second, please?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any other comment? Thank you. Thank you, Ed. All right, let's...
Is this the, okay. Did I forget the number again?
Yeah, there's 2-58. Correct? Am I correct? Okay. So, at this point, let's take, I would take a motion
break.
to go into closed session right now and take a break.
I would like to move us into closed session.
Can I get a verbal vote?
Give me a second. Second?
And a verbal vote?
Yes.
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 Okay. We are in closed session. Thank you. really isn't. All right, thank you. We're back in session.
I'd like to move that we return to open session and state for the record that we only discussed closed agenda item executive director contract while in closed session.
Second?
Okay, been motion and second, we come back into
Yes.
session. Can I get a verbal vote?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
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 All right, thank you. Let's begin with the,
Do we need to?
let's
Okay.
discuss what we.
So the discussion that was had was regarding the compensation for the executive director, and we have agreed, the board and the executive director have agreed on a salary that was an additional 5% increase that was discussed but never officially voted on after his last evaluation in November-ish of 2017. So we're going to go on ahead and make that 5% increase official at this meeting, and then we'll award any other compensation after his performance evaluation for the third year of employment. So
That's a motion.
that is a motion. I move that we codify that 5% increase that we had intended to after the 2017 evaluation.
Can I get a second?
Aye.
Okay.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Thank you. All right, moving along. Reports from subcommittees. Community Outreach Subcommittee report.
We had a meeting and the primary things that we discussed had to do with collateral materials and some other outreach things. Is our next meeting is the 26th, is it? Tuesday?
Yes.
The 26th? At what time? 1 o'clock? 1 o'clock. Amanda, do you have any news for us as far as the collateral materials are concerned? This is another example of what we were talking about earlier about not meeting deadlines and not getting information and keep hearing the same thing over and over again. So we'll deal with that in committee, but that's what we have to report.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right. And your next meeting date was?
Tuesday at 1 o'clock in the basement hearing room,
Okay, thank you.
Plaza del Sol.
All right, policy and procedure.
We did not have a meeting in March. A week ago, the regularly scheduled meeting is a week before this meeting. But I can bring you up to date on the activities from the previous meeting in January and forward from there. But so at the last policy meeting, it was discussed whether we should be reviewing and tracking every policy in some way so that we keep track or at least make some kind of response to APD. That requires a plan, and I think it requires a certain amount of support. And I think it's up to us to, as a policy subcommittee, to develop a plan. But I think in order to make this work, we really need to include some staff kind of support, and this may be what the role or what the demands of the policy subcommittee on a staff person would be, as was indicated, is going to be hired from here. So I think this is an issue that is ongoing, and I think it also brings up the issue of having a policy analyst, which is I think an important position to have in-house. I don't believe the contracts is working for contracting that kind of position out. And so I would encourage, and I think I speak perhaps on the part of the subcommittee, but certainly it's my personal opinion that we need to have a policy analyst in-house, and I will lobby for that when this contract comes up for renewal, and and I think we should start looking for some kind of policy analyst as I think the budget allows. So as far as activities in the committees that we have membership on, there have been no meetings of OPA this year, but there have been several meetings of PPRB, and I've included a list of those, which I've given to Katrina so that they'll be in the minutes. But I think it's worth just highlighting what's happened at the PPRB. There's been about 15 policies, I think, that have gone through PPRB, and Director Harness mentioned many of those earlier in his report. The ones that are CASA-related or important are the SOP 2.8, which is the on-body recording device, which was heard back in January, and we got an update on tonight. The second one is the Force Review Board, which we've made comments on, and I believe that was well vetted and discussed at the policy meeting. There's been about a dozen other policies or more which have either been moved forward and are of minor interests, such as misdemeanor traffic stops, traffic and roadway, safe driver award program, court services, prisoner transport union, and others. Social media is one of those, and I don't want to dismiss that, because that's certainly a policy of interest to APD personnel. Other than that, I have on this list, it indicates what's happened with these. Several have been tabled, most have been passed, and it's here for the record. So that's, are there any questions? That's all I have.
Okay, your next meeting will be?
The next meeting is 4th, I believe, of April. It's 1 week before our next POB meeting.
Okay, thank you. Case Review Subcommittee, Valerie?
Okay, the Case Review Committee was on Tuesday, February the 26th, 2019 at 11:30 a.m. and it was held at the Plaza del Sol building on 2nd Street. All the cases that were on the agenda have been moved and placed tonight to vote on or for discussion. The only change, if you look on the agenda, I want to call attention to one case, and that is case 12518. The vote on that was to put on this evening's non-consent agenda for discussion and a vote by the board. Our next meeting will be held on February the 26th, 2019 at 11:30 a.m. at the Plaza del Sol building. Thank you.
Did you say February?
Yeah.
It's going to be March. I think I said February too, didn't I? I meant March. March 25th.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Beck.
Thank you.
Personnel Subcommittee, Chantal?
Okay, so we are at the point where we are ready to do Director Harness's evaluation. And again, this evaluation period is going to be from December of 2017 through December 2018. So it's a 13-month evaluation. Last meeting we sent, or after the last board meeting, we sent out the evaluation tool for you all to review and comment on. And we are at that point where we can vote to use that evaluation tool. So I would make a motion that we accept the evaluation tool proposed at the last board meeting.
I would like to second that motion.
Okay, it's been motion and second. We utilize the evaluation tool that was presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No, I'm not opposed.
Have a question or a comment?
No, I just wanted to comment. I wanted to thank you personally for all the hard work that you did on this.
Oh, you're welcome.
An amazing job.
You really did an amazing job. And the thing that's so exciting about this and so great about it is that it really follows the ordinance to the extent that we know what the ordinance is going to be, and the CASA. And I think for the first time, We're actually processing the work itself and the intention of that. And I think before we were so busy trying to build a system, it was hard to do that. And I can't thank you enough for your great work on that.
My pleasure. Okay, so now that that evaluation tool has been proposed, let me talk to you guys about the next steps for it. You have, or approved. You have in your packets a copy of the evaluation tool in SurveyMonkey format, and we have Amanda and Katrina to thank for that. This is what you all will be sent. This is what the stakeholders will be sent. This is what the staff will be sent, I believe. All those parties will get some version of this. And that evaluation tool, now that it's been proposed or approved, can go out tomorrow morning. I am told it will go out by 9 a.m. You will have 1 week to complete this evaluation. Please do so that the Personnel Subcommittee can do next steps at our March 22nd personnel meeting, 9:30 in the morning. Thank you, Chantal. You are welcome. Okay. I'm done. I don't have yours.
I gave it to you.
No, I have mine.
Oh, here it is. All righty, thank you. Yeah. Your next meeting is when?
March 22nd.
March 22nd. All
And
right.
you're on that committee, so.
I understand. All righty. All right, moving on to discussion. I now move that all seats are vacant for the chair and vice chair, and I will entertain nominations for, first of all, the chair position.
I'd like to nominate Chantal as chair of the board.
Second.
Okay, it's not a second. Any other
You don't
nominations?
second?
You don't second. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? So it's seeing none. Chair Chantel, you have duly been elected.
Let's take a
Can we have a pro forma vote, please?
We have to vote.
All right, all in favor of Chantel?
Aye.
I was going to give it to her. Any objections? Thank you. All right, Chantel, you are now formally chair of this body.
Thank you very much.
All right. The chair is open for vice president. I will accept nominations.
Leonard.
Val?
Okay, I would like to elect Joanne Fine to serve as vice chair of the board.
Nominate or elect?
Nominate.
Okay. Okay. Any other nominations?
I nominate Chelsea.
Okay. We have Chelsea and Ms. Fine. Can we get a verbal vote for these positions? I will start with Joanne Fine. All in favor for Joanne Fine?
Aye.
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 Okay, that's 4. All in favor for Chelsea?
Aye.
There's 2. Okay. The vote is 4-2. Joanne being selected. Ms. Fine, you are the vice chair of this body.
Okay, thank you. I think.
All right. All right.
You're not off the hook, are you?
Yes, I am. I'm running.
Effective now or next
No,
meeting?
I'll finish.
Thank you.
I'll finish this. 2017 annual report, Mr. Harness.
Yes, Chair Waits, Honorable Board, this was before the body last month, and the body set a date certain for comments. I received none, so therefore I will submit the 2017 annual report to City Council and the Mayor's office with a cover memo.
Okay. Any comments for Mr. Harness? Thank you. All righty. Oversight ordinance amendment, C/2, 018-23.
Yes. How would you like us to proceed with this?
Chair Waits, Vice Chair Galloway, or should I be Chair-elect Galloway? A couple of weeks ago, I forwarded to you some proposed amendments to the Oversight Ordinance from individual counselors. As Mr. Moya pointed out, there's a special study session for the ordinance on March 21st at 5 o'clock in the City Council chambers. The ordinance will be on the agenda for the March 18th City Council meeting for public comment. If there are, I think that the board should evaluate each of the proposed amendments and decide whether or not they support the proposed amendments or whether or not they're opposed to those amendments.
Can we get your feedback on them? Are there any that stand out that you think need to be changed?
Do we need to take?
Chair Waits, Vice Chair-elect Fine. I think if you go through them, I believe that the proposed amendments from Councilor Benton are in line with what the board has previously proposed, taking into account also language from APD Forward. I believe one of the issues is Councilor Gibson's proposed amendment that would preclude the board from holding meetings here in City Council chambers.
What's the rationale for that?
The explanation as drafted is the CPOA shall be housed and the board shall hold its meetings in a facility that is separate from any police presence and is located outside of the Albuquerque/Bernalillo County Government Center, the police department, and/or all of the police substations. This amendment would require the board meetings to be held outside of City Hall. The ordinance already requires the CPOA offices to be housed outside of City Hall, a measure that is intended to help promote the agency's appearance of independence. Having the meeting outside of City Hall may go further in promoting independence in fact and in appearance.
May I ask you a question? My question is, don't we have an obligation to do the GovTV thing as part of the ordinance? And isn't this the facility that allows us to do that?
Chair Waits, Vice Chair-elect Fine, that is correct. It creates a conflict in the ordinance. The ordinance requires that we live stream our meetings. When we've attempted to do so for special meetings off-site, it has been nearly impossible to do that. So that causes a conflict within the ordinance.
Thank you.
So you would like us to go through these and form our opinion and whatnot, correct?
Well, Chair Waits, Chair-elect Galloway, I believe the board would need to take a position if they want to state a board position coming up at the next study session.
I agree. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that nobody has a copy of this since it wasn't in the board packet, right? Can we use the overhead projector so that we can at least see this?
It seems to me that we've been through these 2 or 3 times now as a board, and I would like to suggest that we only look at the ones that are dramatically different than what we already have talked about. I think the Councilor Gibson proposal is one that would be evaluated easily at the council, by the council, and doesn't really need our help. We can, I think if the council can see how to do that, well, I suspect they would do it, but if, there's no, there's so many factors that weigh against it, I don't see how we're going to change that much or have much impact. And I've looked at these, and I mean, I don't believe there's there may be one or two, and I'm sure you're more familiar with it, that are dramatically different than we've already voted for. I mean, it seems to me that we've been through this enough.
You beat this dog? Did we beat this dog?
Yeah.
Mr. Harness, that's why I thought it would be a good idea to ask you if there's anything that puts your hair on fire, so to speak.
Chair Waits, Member Cass, and Vice Chair-elect Fine. There is that Gibson proposal. Additionally, I think the second Gibson proposal is essentially what is already provided to the board for making decisions. I think the one that is probably the most troubling is Councilor Sanchez wants to eliminate the minimum funding level, and he proposes the CPOA shall have a dedicated and independent source of funding, administer its own budget in compliance with state and local laws, supervise its own staff in compliance with the city's merit ordinance and contractual services, policies, and procedures. The CPA shall recommend and propose its budget to the mayor and the city council during the city's budget process to carry out the powers and duties under sections 9-4-1 through 9-4-1-14, including itemized listings for the funding of staff and all necessary operations. So his proposal is to eliminate the language equal to, at a minimum, 0.5% of APD's annual operation budget.
May I ask you, how does that compare to other or oversight groups? Do they have a percentage of the police budget as we do? And how would we be sure that we had enough to do the job? It would certainly put us in the middle of a political process.
Chair Waits, Vice Chair-elect Fine, I can't off the top of my head tell you what other oversight ordinances funding mechanisms are for whether or not it's reflected as a percentage. But certainly this could be the first step to having the CPOA wither on the vine by not adequately funding it without some sort of a minimum threshold established within the ordinance, while the CASA demands that we are adequately funded. Once the CASA is gone, then if there isn't this at least a threshold mechanism for measurement, then I fear that's the first step towards reducing funding and eventually having oversight disappear.
I agree.
And my analysis, I wish that I was looking at it on paper right now, but I worry. Thank you, Chantal.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this is worse than the elimination. I mean, I think I'm pretty sure it's worse than the elimination of the minimum, because it actually says that the CPOA shall have an independent source of funding. So to me, that sounds like they are suggesting that the city not fund us at all, right, and that we would be required to raise our own budget. So it's I want to call everyone's attention to that and make sure that it wasn't missed.
It may be knee-jerk, but that was my reaction to it, too.
So we should take a vote.
Mr. Harness?
Chair Waits, Vice Chair-elect Fine. No, those are the ones that stick out, that are problematic.
So we definitely, so it was this one, Councilor Sanchez's, and which was the other one that you wanted to?
Gibson.
Councilor Gibson's requirement that meetings be housed outside of City Hall.
I'm just looking to find which one it actually is in here.
While you're looking, by a show of hands, who's planning on going Monday? I am.
I'm going to try to.
Anybody else? Mr. Harness, I assume you're going to be there?
I'm sorry,
assuming you're-
Chair Waits, Vice Chair-elect Fine, yes, I'll be there.
Okay, I'll be there with you. Are you going? 5 o'clock Monday.
So I propose a motion that we make a recommendation, the city council reject Councilor Sanchez's proposed amendment relating to our budget.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been motion and second that we propose or take a position that the city council rejects that proposal.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed? Okay.
And then on the Gibson one, we'd just let them know that we can't, that's against the ordinance, we have to do it.
Okay.
So I'll just cover that one on there.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Mr. Harness?
Chair Waits, no, not as far as that agenda item.
Any other questions for Mr. Harness? Okay. Thank you. That was the oversight ordinance. OMA, Foster.
Yes, Chair Waits, I believe it was last week, Attorney Gooch sent out a letter to respond to some allegations regarding violations of the Open Meetings Act and IPRA from Dr. Carl Foster, who I learned today was actually a member of the Police Oversight Commission. Now, this is an issue that arose back in December of 2015. And if you'll recall, your counsel at that point recommended at the January 2016 meeting that a series of emails be posted in order to remedy what he was alleging were violations. So you'll note on the CPOA's website that there are hundreds of emails that are posted. So for some reason, that issue has been brought up again by Dr. Foster and his attorney. And so Attorney Gooch would like you to approve the letter that she's drafted to go out to him in response to those renewed allegations for those incidents back in 2015, 2016.
And if you haven't had a chance to read the letter says from Ms. Gooch, our attorney, that it shows the agenda and has attachments of when these things came up at the board meeting. We did answer the questions. We did do the work. As I recall, am I missing anything?
Chair Waits, Vice Chair-elect Fine. No. It was the position of your former counsel that the remedy as offered and as executed was enough to satisfy any alleged violations.
I move that we accept Ms. Gooch's letter as written.
I'll second that. But I have a question.
It's been motion and second that we approve the letter as written. Are there any?
Yes, I'm just curious. The only reference I see in Ms. Gooch's letter that this was a letter sent on January 2019. But what was the claim made at that point? I didn't find that letter from Mr. Owens in that file, in those three attachments that you referenced. And I don't understand this seemed like a stale complaint. Everything was done 3 years ago, or there 2.5 years ago, and then suddenly it appears. And So nothing transpired in the interim, or?
Chair Waits, member Dr. Cass, no, we're as flummoxed as is the city, as is everyone, as to how now all of a sudden this is being resurrected, that there's something that somehow is missing. And so there's been requests for specificity for whatever that is. And perhaps it will be provided and perhaps it won't be.
This wasn't lost in the mail for 3 years?
No.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chantal? Chelsea?
I didn't receive a copy of the letter, I don't think, so I'm just going to state that as a conflict for me and not vote.
All right. So she sustains. Okay.
Can't sustain. You can either vote yea or nay.
Abstain.
Abstain.
I didn't. I cited it as a conflict. Like, I'm in conflict because I haven't been able to review it, but I think the board's vote can carry it.
She could abstain.
No, I can't abstain. Well, I can.
Recuse.
That's essentially what I'm doing. I can recuse myself from the vote because I have a conflict.
All right.
Conflict being I couldn't review the materials, unfortunately.
So it's 5-1.
It's 5-0.
5-0.
With a recusal.
Yeah. 5-0. Okay. Thank you. All right. Let's move on to briefing the court. Judge Browning.
Yes, Chair Waits, Honorable Board, we do now have a new judge for the settlement agreement, the CASA. Judge Browning has been appointed. If you read the email from the Department of Justice, Judge Browning is taking the position that he would like to continue in the tradition of how that case was being handled, a la Judge Brack, with public hearings and public input, which I remind everyone is we are the only CASA that allows for that in any of these instances across the United States. The Department of Justice is asking all of the stakeholders and the amici to draft a 1 to 2 page statement about the history of the party in the action, so that the judge can get up to speed quicker than going through transcripts and doing all of that. So the email contained a deadline of March 29th to draft something to get to the judge. So I'm bringing this to your attention.
Okay.
And you're prepared to draft that email or draft that summary? Is that? I mean, it seems that you're we do have a role here, and seems to me that you're the most appropriate person to draft that. That was a question.
Chair Waits, Dr. Cass, yes, I would be prepared to draft it.
Just run it by the chair.
Are you looking for input from us? Or are you noticing us that this is happening?
Chair Waits, Chair-elect Galloway, I'm always looking for input from the board, so.
I would move to ask Director Harness to draft the appropriate letter to the court.
And I'm willing to help if I can. If you need me, I'll be happy to. I mean, I've been here a long time, so if you need help, I'm happy to do it. Does that work for you, ma'am?
Works for me.
Yeah.
All right. We have a motion on the floor.
A second.
Second. Okay. It's been motion and second. Joanne, second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Harness. All right. All right, let's get to the consent agenda cases.
Okay.
Ms. Valerie?
Okay, excuse me. Consent agenda cases. First are the administratively closed cases. We have case 232-18, 260-18, 005-19, 025-19, 226-19, 237-18, 264-18, 020-19, 031-19, 239-18, 002-19, 022-19, 044-19, 257-18, 003-19, 023-19, 053-19, 259-18, 004-19, and 024-19. And I'd like to make a motion to accept these cases.
Seconded.
Second.
It's been motion and second that we accept the cases as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
One opposed. Thank you.
Okay, next we have exonerated and unfound case number 052-18. I make a motion to accept the findings.
Second.
It's been motion and second that we accept the finding on the exonerated case, which was unfounded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Okay, next we have exonerated, not sustained, case 212-18. I make a motion to accept the findings.
I second.
It's been motion and second that we accept the findings on 212-18. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All absent.
Now the next case we have is the non-consent agenda. This was one that was administratively closed case. It's 125-18. It's open for discussion.
Sure. I put this, I think my feedback was the feedback that resulted in this case being placed on the non-consent agenda. The facts of this case, as I understand them to be, is that it's a little bit sensitive, I suppose. A woman was eating at Fuddruckers restaurant. An officer had ordered food and was waiting for his food at the restaurant. And in the meantime, a woman arrived, and the officer and the woman removed themselves from the restaurant. And then the complainant states that she and her children then witnessed the officer and the woman engaged in a sexual act in a vehicle. And the CPOA administratively closed the case. And our standard, our sort of like invented standard again, is that we can administratively close cases that are not minimally substantiated. But the CPOA in this investigation found that the officer did in fact eat at Fuddruckers on the day the complainant says she witnessed this happening. And so I think I think that that's a substantiation of the complaint. Not the complaint in whole, but it substantiates, her allegations to a degree. So it is minimally substantiated at least. And so I therefore thought that the category administratively closed wasn't appropriate and that the case should be investigated. There was the CPOA did proffer that the complainant didn't participate in the investigation after submitting the complaint, but that wouldn't be the only aspect of an investigation. The officer would still need to be interviewed, so I thought it would be appropriate that this case be investigated as opposed to administratively closed.
I have a question. Well, why would we bring the officer in if the person that witnessed the event is not willing to cooperate?
Just because of a strict application of our standards, which is, was this complaint substantiated or minimally substantiated or not? And it's our policy that, if a case can be minimally substantiated, then it shall be investigated. And so it's just an application of the standard that we have.
I would like to know from Director Harness, what was done with this case? I mean, what was the process that was followed?
Chair Waits, Board Member Dr. Cass, yes, we did pull a CAD report to confirm that the officer was at the restaurant during the allegations. We attempted to retrieve surveillance video from the restaurant. We were unable to do so. We attempted to speak with the complainant via email and via phone, and there was no cooperation. Aside from minimally substantiating a complaint, admin closed has other standards as well. A lack of information is one of them. In this case, I don't believe we have enough information to go forward for a full investigation. We have no evidence but for the fact that the officer was at the restaurant. The complaint was initially upset because the officer was ordering food while in uniform. And then, oh, by the way, I witnessed this sex act in the parking lot. And I believe that if something like this so egregious was witnessed, I would think that one would want to participate and at least give us a statement on which we could base an investigation.
I don't think...
Therefore, excuse me.
Sorry.
Therefore, in consultation with the investigator in this case, we made the decision to administratively close it.
May I respond to just one thing?
Sure.
I really do not think that we should be in the business of speculating as to why or why not somebody didn't want to participate in a formal interview. We shouldn't decide what we're going to do with cases based on guesses about that. I think that that would be really dangerous, and I would advise against it.
Chair Waits and Member Vandeventer, you're doing that exactly. I never speculated as to why the person didn't cooperate. I simply stated the fact that she did not.
No, you
and without
said...
and without that statement, it's my decision not to move forward with the case.
But what you said was that I would think if something like that so egregious had in fact occurred that she would have participated. That's a speculation about her state of mind or her reasoning for behaving in a certain way, and we'll just never know why she did or did not participate. We can't know that.
Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
I'd move that we accept this administratively closed case as presented.
A second.
Okay. It's a motion that we accept the administratively closed case as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
We got 4-2. All righty. Serious use of force, officers involved case. We have none. PO-based review of Garrity materials, 186-16. Mr. Harness, do you have?
Yes, Chair Waits, this is on the Garrity material agenda. Member Vandeventer proposed the motion for review of the Garrity materials in this civilian complaint. Another complaint where we did not have a complainant come forward to give us information. However, based upon Member Vandeventer's review of the file, she believes that it's important for the board to review the Garrity materials in this case. That would be the interview of the officer. So therefore, that's why it was placed on the agenda.
So I move that we make these materials available for review for our next meeting.
Okay, there's a motion and a second that the Garrity materials be made available to us. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed.
Just a reminder, isn't it still true that they have to go, whoever wants to review it has to go to make an arrangement with Professional Standards, formerly IA, and go and see it at the police department?
Yes, Chair Waits, board member, Chair Waits, Vice Chair-elect Fine. That is correct. So we will make arrangements for those materials to be over at Professional Standards, and we will get you the contact information to arrange for a time to review those.
Is that necessary? It was my understanding that you all have this material in your files in your offices.
No, it's part of the
Chair Waits, Chair-elect Galloway, this is so that you're in compliance with the ordinance.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I have other business.
Oh,
I have
you
other
have-
business.
Hold on. Sorry.
I'm so sorry to do this.
I'm sorry.
Other business.
I held it off. I marked it out right here. So I am so sorry.
That's okay. I just have a couple of things. One that's just kind of a shout out that I meant to do after our last board meeting, but it was Valentine's Day and I didn't want to be here. And then one for your all's consideration. So the first is my son's preschool had like a career day where 3 officers from the Northeast Area Command participated with a bunch of 2 to 5-year-olds that have no idea what's going on. So just a shout out to Zach Herbst, Leah Lopez, and Chris Brito from the Northeast Area Command. The director tells me that they were absolutely amazing with the kids. They were very patient. And Officer Lopez wasn't working. That wasn't one of her shift days, so she came in on a day off because she wanted the girls at the school to see what women can do. So I think that is amazing that they would spend their time and do community outreach that way. And I did say that I wanted to express my thanks for their involvement with that. So just so you all are aware of something that's being done. The other thing that I would like you all to consider, it's been on my mind that for our subcommittee levels, we don't have a process to find for the election of the chair. And I think that it would just be good practice at the same time that we elect the chair and vice chair for the board, that we formally do that at the committee levels as well, elect the chair for the subcommittees, so that it's not just one person in perpetuity, but it's a deliberate act of who we want leading those committees. So I would recommend that this month at each of the committees that we take that action and just get in the practice of doing that.
Even if we've already taken it?
Even if we have, just so that we get on the same schedule. And then I would like to kind of take your temperature and see what you guys think about amending our policies and procedures to include that process as well.
I believe this was part of the process in an earlier version of our policies and procedures. And I haven't been able to find it in the most recent version, but it did exist, that the committees elected their chair, elected their own chair, and that presumably would be when they were reconstituted after appointment by the chair of the POB. So it seems to me that new committee appointments would have to be formalized, and then would lead naturally to the election of a chair. And there's no provision in there that says that you can't succeed yourself.
Exactly.
So, I think it's all already there in spirit, and I think it just needs to get started by committee appointments with the election of officers, that occurs after the election of officers.
Do we all feel that way? We just need to codify it and do it?
Yeah, you're just talking about the committee deciding who's going to be the chair. Yeah, I think that's what most of us have been doing.
I would suggest that we do it in March, and just formally do it in March every year.
Okay.
Cool. Awesome.
Motion to that effect?
I don't think we can because it wasn't on the agenda, but we can certainly have something drafted for our next board meeting.
But just go ahead and do it.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, do we need to change it in our policies and procedures?
I'll draft something between now and next
That's
meeting.
what Tina did, yeah.
Or I can ask Tina too, yeah. Okay, now, motion to adjourn.
Any other business before we adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.